Hey guys, welcome back. I am so excited to be here with Heidi, and she's going to share an awesome story about how she has had to overcome lots and lots of meetings with doctors and fighting for her kids, because our kids are so worth the fight, and whenever somebody doesn't understand something that you know is going on, it's a struggle, and she's got an awesome story for you. So what is something in motherhood that you did not expect going into it that you've had to overcome over the time?
I think that the thing that I really wasn't expecting was to have a child that had a birth defect or a disability, and that I couldn't just go to the doctor and get them diagnosed and get it fixed. When all of my birth children were born, they were born with a defect in their airway. And it was very hard to diagnose, and by the time we were able to get my oldest son diagnosed, he had to be immediately admitted into the ICU.
Right after he was born?
Right after he was born, had emergency surgery. Actually, I'm sorry, that was 2 months after he was born. Okay. He stopped breathing multiple times and no one could figure out why. And we took him to doctor after doctor. Finally, actually through a miracle, we were able to get into a doctor who knew what he was looking at when he saw it. Wow. And he was immediately admitted to the ICU, had emergency surgery right after that. For me, being a mom, I never knew it would be about fighting. You know, it would be fighting for them over and over again. I fought for his education. I didn't know that I would ever have to go to doctor. If I get emotional, we're going to be really sad. I'm really sorry if I start crying on you.
No, that's totally
I didn't know that having children meant that you go to doctor after doctor and beg them to listen to you.
Yeah.
Because when you have an invisible illness, which all of my kids did, that's what you have to do. They're not looking for that one rare birth defect or that one rare, disease when you go to the doctor.
So what did fighting look like? You mentioned fighting for his school.
I was told he had to go to a developmental preschool because he'd been oxygen deprived so much it affects, your development, your cognitive abilities. Yeah. And I was told he will never succeed in school. He will not be able to be in a regular classroom. He's going to have to be in a self-contained classroom. And I had a special education background, so I knew what that meant, and I knew he didn't belong there. And it was like, it lit a fire under me. I was determined that nobody was going to tell me my kid can't do something because he can do anything. And I really believed that. And so I thought, I'm going to homeschool him until he gets to kindergarten and get him so far ahead that he can just be in a regular classroom. And I ended up homeschooling him to the point where he was ahead. And then I just kept homeschooling because it seemed like it was what made sense for us. By the time he was in high school, he placed 9th in the world at the history fair. He placed internationally.
Wow.
And he's a successful businessman today. And so it's a matter of, I needed to learn how to not believe people when they told me things about my kids, that weren't positive. And I'm not saying that not everyone can overcome everything, but it's really important as a mother that I learned to believe that my kids could do anything. And part of that was just realizing that I was a partner with God, that it wasn't just my child, it was his child.
Yes.
And that he was going to help me, help them to do anything that, and also I didn't think I'd ever have to research and figure, dig on the internet and learn medical lingo and try. My middle daughter started having problems with her memory. She was having invisible seizures. We didn't realize it. And finally they started becoming, the grand mal seizures. That's obvious, that's what happened. We ended up having to travel across the country to find a doctor that would help her. And that was also through another huge miracle. My friend's mom back east, I live in Utah, so this is back in New York. Her church was praying for my daughter.
Wow.
And then someone at that church met an epilepsy advocate who called me in Utah and said, I think I know a doctor who can help your daughter.
Wow.
And we called him, we got on a waiting list, and he was able to diagnose her the day we got to Dallas.
Oh my goodness.
And
what a blessing.
It's just these huge things, and then it happened all over again. I had another daughter who 2 years ago woke up one morning and had lost her memory for a totally different medical reason, but it was another process of fighting and fighting. And fighting looks like when a doctor tells you it's psychological, there's nothing wrong with them, that you go to the next doctor. And when they tell you the same thing, you go to the next doctor. And you will do that for maybe a year, because that's what we did.
You just don't give up.
And you don't ever give up, because I knew I knew that they were wrong. I had the strongest conviction in my heart that what they were telling me wasn't true, and that I wasn't going to give up until I figured it out.
And just trusting that.
And I did.
Yeah.
I absolutely, and I knew that came from God, because I knew that it was easier to give up.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
It was a lot easier, a lot cheaper to give up, because it's really expensive to get in a fight with the medical establishment, and we had to leave, not go to a local doctor to be able to get help, but we found a doctor who on the very first try was able to diagnose it. So it's just getting help to get to the right person every time.
That's awesome. And so, you said giving up would have been easier, but I feel like long run, like by the end of your life, it wouldn't have been the easiest way to go because of all the blessings that you've seen from all the fighting.
It is, for me, it changed who I was as a person, though. Initially, in good and bad ways, I ended up having PTSD from that fight. With my last child, who had lost her memory, it was so hard, and I knew that she was going to die. I knew that she was dying. I was positive. In fact, I even had one doctor tell me, I know you've had all these doctors tell you that every time she stops breathing, she's going to start breathing again and it's going to be okay. He said, but I think they're all wrong. And I think you need to keep looking until you find that one doctor who knows that I'm right. I mean, but that wasn't his field of expertise. And so that was all. And I went by what he said, and I was going to live by that. But the trauma of having doctor after doctor tell me there's nothing wrong, give up, was so hard that I wound up with PTSD. And that makes you feel, it makes you feel like you've died inside. That's the best way to describe it. Yeah. And so coming back from that so that I could handle what was going on was huge, because the person with the PTSD could not handle, that version of me could not handle what was happening in my family or my life.
So what flipped that around? What helped you get out of the PTSD?
Well, one thing, except the fact that I needed help, and that it was okay to need help, and it was okay to need medication. They're so cute. How could you just... Okay,
this is real life.
And it was okay to need medication. It's really okay that you need medication. Yeah. And then also, I just stopped feeling sorry for myself, and I had to forgive the people who I felt like put us in that situation in the first place. And then the biggest thing was I had to say, okay, so I'm lost. As a person, the person I used to be doesn't exist anymore. I don't know who I am anymore, but I'm going to use this as an opportunity, as almost like a reboot. You reboot your computer because it's having problems, and then it does better afterwards, hopefully, right? And that's how I decided that I was going to be this person that I needed to be for my family, that I was going to hopefully let God decide, who I was going to be. I got a planner. I started planning. I started, pulling out scriptures that applied to our lives and said, okay, if that's the promise we have, that's the promise I'm going to claim that promise, Yeah. And that's just what I've been doing, and that has made all the difference in the world.
That's awesome. I love that visual of rebooting the computer, because you can do that to yourself, and I think we forget about that often.
We are who we choose to become, and it was just like, okay, I choose to be the person who's bigger than this problem, because this problem isn't going to go away. And I don't want my kids to think that they're problems. I don't want them to think that they're my problem,
No, yeah, exactly, because then that affects who they are and who they become.
Right.
How was it when you decided to reboot and become somebody new, become your amazing self now?
Oh, you're so sweet.
How was your interaction with friends and family during that transition? Because I feel like a lot of times we can be nervous about remaking ourselves because we don't know if people will accept that or if they'll believe that, and that can kind of be nerve-wracking if you focus on them instead of focusing on yourself.
So I think that with family, for sure, it was better because I guess I got to the point where the PTSD was so bad, I didn't really want to associate with other people because it was painful. If you didn't understand my problems, I didn't want to talk to you. And it sounds so strange that you become so withdrawn, but you do. Yeah. It's so painful to talk to people who have a normal life, and who don't get you. And then also, I spent so much time trying not to be triggered that it was hard for me to even go to church anymore. I mean, things that were normal for me that I'd done my whole life, be in crowds, go to the movies, you stop enjoying life and you just stay home. Yeah. And so it was a matter of, I think it was good for my family because I wanted to do things again, and I was trying to make myself do things again. and be brave.
Yeah.
I think when you're that broken, people will take any fixed version of you, and it's not. It's funny, but it's not. But I also think it's true.
Yeah,
I think
I would agree.
that any part of you that is not the way you were before, they're just happy that you're
when they
improving.
start seeing life back in you.
Right. I think that they're just
how
happy that you're improving. And as far as friends are concerned, I think I go through a phase where I had to make new friends.
Yeah, which is totally fine.
And that it is okay, but it is the way it is, you know?
That's awesome. Thank you so much for
Oh,
sharing your
you're
story.
welcome.
I want to dig in so much more and just keep on learning. So, do you talk about all this on your channel too?
I do talk about all this on my channel. I talk about what it's like to have PTSD. I talk about what it's like to be going through the process of trying to get a child diagnosed. My daughter is partially diagnosed and partially she's still a medical mystery. And just helping people to, I think the biggest problem is that everyone wants to be normal and feel normal.
Yeah, if there is a normal.
Well, they have an idea of what normal is, and they want that.
That's true.
And so we talk about dealing with it anyway, and doing your best to have a normal life under
finding your normal.
Yeah, and that's what we work on a lot. So
that's awesome. That's cool. So make sure you go and check out her channel, learn so much more. She's got a lot of wisdom to give, and thank you so much for sharing.
Thank you.